According to ancient texts from across the world, there was once an age when giants walked the earth. The Nephilim of Hebrew scripture, the Titans of Greek mythology, the Fomorians of Celtic lore. But these weren't gentle giants from fairy tales. They were predators. And you would have been prey. According to the Book of Enoch, an ancient text that predates the Bible, these giants weren't just large humans. They were abominations. Hybrid creatures born from the union of fallen angels and human women. The text describes them as being 3,000 ells in height. That's over 9,000 feet tall. Now, as one of these creatures draws near your settlement, you realize what those measurements actually mean. You crane your neck upward, but you can't even see where this being ends. Its foot, now visible in the distance, is larger than your entire village. When it takes a single step, the ground shakes so violently that you're thrown to your knees. You try to run, but where? In a world built by and for giants, there is nowhere a creature your size can hide. These giants weren't content to coexist with humanity. According to ancient sources, they were insatiable consumers. The Book of Enoch states that they consumed all the acquisitions of men. When that wasn't enough, they began eating humans themselves. As you crouch behind what used to be your home's wall, now reduced to rubble by the giant's approach, you watch in horror as massive fingers, each thicker than tree trunks, begin plucking people from the ruins. Your neighbors, your friends, your family, lifted effortlessly and examined like insects before disappearing into a mouth so vast you could walk into it standing upright. This is your new reality. You are not just small, you are food. Let's say you somehow survived that first encounter. Maybe the giant was distracted by easier prey. Maybe you found a crack in the earth deep enough to hide in. Now you face an even more terrifying prospect. How do you live day to day in a world that wasn't built for you? You need food, but the crops that once fed your village are now trampled into the earth by footsteps larger than houses. The few grains that remain are scattered across miles of devastated landscape, and gathering them would mean exposing yourself in the open for hours when another giant might appear on the horizon. You need shelter. But look around. Every structure in this world is built to accommodate beings whose scale you can barely comprehend. The doorways tower above you like cathedral entrances, if you could even reach them. The stairs are carved from single blocks of stone, each step taller than you are. Across the globe, we find massive stone structures that mainstream archaeology struggles to explain. You need water. But the wells and fountains of this giant world are so deep and wide that approaching them is like standing at the edge of a cliff. The containers used to draw water are larger than bathtubs and weigh more than cars. Even if you could reach the water, how would you lift a bucket designed for hands the size of your entire body? In Lebanon, the ancient site of Baalbek contains the largest worked stone blocks in the world. The Temple of Jupiter sits on a foundation of stones, each weighing 800 tons. But even more mysterious are the unfinished stones in the nearby quarry. Blocks weighing up to 1,200 tons, cut with precision that defies explanation. As you wander through these giant-built cities, every tool you encounter is impossibly large. Hammers that weigh as much as cars, cups that could serve as swimming pools, weapons that you couldn't even budge, let alone wield. You're not just small in this world, you're utterly helpless. And that's when you realize the horrifying truth. You weren't meant to survive here. You were meant to serve, or be consumed. But let's say you've managed to find food, water, and some form of shelter in the crevices of this giant world. Now comes the truly terrifying part. Dealing with the rulers themselves. The Book of Jubilees, another ancient text, states that injustice increased on the earth and all flesh corrupted its way during the time of the giants. They weren't just physically superior, they were morally bankrupt. And you, tiny and defenseless, would be completely at their mercy. Picture your typical morning routine in this nightmare world. You wake up, if you manage to sleep through the constant rumbling of giant footsteps, and immediately check the horizon for massive silhouettes. But then you hear it, a sound like thunder, but rhythmic. Laughter, giant laughter, echoing across the landscape like the voice of a god. And it's getting closer. According to the scriptures, these beings filled the earth with violence. The Hebrew word used to describe their behavior, Hamas, means violence in its most extreme form. Not just killing, but cruelty, oppression, and the complete absence of justice. As the laughter grows louder, you realize with horror what's happening. They're playing a game, and you're the game piece. The ancient texts suggest that these giants weren't just randomly violent, they were systematically evil. They taught humans forbidden knowledge, the arts of war, the making of weapons, the secrets of sorcery and seduction. But they did this not to help humanity advance, but to corrupt and ultimately destroy them. Let's say you encounter a friendly giant, one who doesn't immediately try to crush or eat you. Instead, it kneels down to your level, which still puts its face high above you like a building, and begins to teach you things. But the knowledge it shares is poisonous. How to make weapons that will turn humans against each other. How to manipulate others through dark arts. How to summon powers that will corrupt your very soul. You realize that even the kind giants aren't trying to help you. They're trying to damn you. Their very presence corrupts everything they touch, turning survival itself into a form of spiritual poison. You wouldn't just be living under giant overlords. You'd be living in a world poisoned by their influence, where every day of survival comes at the cost of your humanity. But perhaps most terrifying of all would be the technology these giants possessed. Ancient texts hint at capabilities that sound almost like science fiction. The ability to manipulate weather, to move massive stones through the air, to create hybrid creatures, and to access knowledge from beyond the physical world. Now imagine being on the receiving end of such power. You're hiding in what you think is a safe cave when suddenly the weather outside changes. Not gradually, like a natural storm, but instantly. The sky turns black, lightning begins striking in precise patterns, and you realize with horror that this isn't natural. It's being controlled. The Book of Enoch describes the Watchers teaching humans about the cutting of roots and the power of enchantment. Other texts speak of giants who could control the elements, who built flying vessels, and who possessed weapons of unimaginable power. You peer outside your cave and see massive stone blocks floating through the air like leaves in the wind, rearranging themselves into new structures at the giant's whim. The very physics of your world are being rewritten by beings whose technology you can't even begin to understand. Archaeological evidence supports some of these claims. In Peru, the Sacsayhuaman fortress contains stones so perfectly fitted that they've survived countless earthquakes without mortar. The precision of the cuts suggests technology far beyond anything ancient humans should have possessed. Local legends attribute the construction to giants who could make stones walk. But imagine witnessing such construction as a tiny human observer. You watch as stones larger than buildings move through the air without any visible means of support, fitting together with impossible precision. You realize that in this world, the very elements are your enemies. If the Nephilim did not survive the flood, then someone must have recreated them. This is the heart of the second theory, known by many as the second incursion hypothesis. According to the apocryphal Book of Enoch and Book of Jubilees, a group of divine beings came to earth in the days before the flood. They were known as the Watchers. Like we see in the Bible, the Watchers in the Book of Enoch took an uncommon liking to the women of the earth. And they did not stop there. Instead, they proceeded to marry human wives and produce hybrid offspring. In the words of the apocryphal book, they corrupted creation with forbidden knowledge. While it is true that the Lord sent the flood to wipe out their atrocities from Earth's surface, there might be more to it than what we ever knew. What if not all the Watchers were destroyed or imprisoned? This comes up as a valid idea, because in Enoch chapter 10, verse 9, we read, "And destroy the children of fornication, and the children of the Watchers from amongst men, and cause them to go forth. Send them one against the other, that they may destroy each other in 10 battle. For length of days shall they not have." This means that not all were destroyed by the flood. Some were turned against themselves in battle. The second invasion hypothesis suggests that a second group of Watchers or fallen angels descended when the flood was over. Not only did they return, but they also restarted the unholy matrimony between divine beings and daughters of men. This would explain why giants suddenly show up in Numbers 13, making the Israelite spies say, "We saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes." It would also explain the troubling consistency of giant tribes across Canaan, that is, the Rephaim, Emim, and Zamzumim. If there was a second angelic rebellion, then the Nephilim did not survive the flood in the first place. They were recreated. In the book of Enoch, we are told that the original Watchers were punished and bound beneath the earth until the day of judgment. Some were thrown into a dark abyss, locked and guarded by archangels. If this is true, how could they return? This led many scholars to argue that there was only one rebellion, one invasion alone. Everything after the flood, including the Canaan giants and Goliath of Gath, was the result of surviving genetic lines, not new unions between angels and women. Some notorious scholars suggest that only the chief Watchers were imprisoned, leaving lower-ranking rebels free to act again. Others claim that new fallen angels may have joined Satan's cause after the flood, carrying on the corruption from where their predecessors left off. If you found the second invasion theory terrifying, brace yourself. There is a creepier way that the Nephilim may have used to retain their DNA among us today. Picture this. There is war in the land, and everyone is running for their lives. Many will remember their passports and book emergency flights, while others will use alternative routes. For a hybrid species like the Nephilim, an alternative route may have been underground. According to some Bible theorists, the Nephilim were not totally wiped out by the flood. They survived by retreating beneath the surface of the earth. Caves, vast tunnels, and the hollow earth, you name it. The story of giants hiding underground is old news and universal. In Tibetan and Hindu lore, there is a hidden realm beneath the Himalayas called the Shambhala. Even the 19th century Agartha myth describes a sub-world ruled by citizens of terrific size and wisdom. Are these all a coincidence or scattered pieces of the truth? What if the descendants of the Nephilim escaped to the only place the floodwaters couldn't reach? It gets even more interesting with the Lovelock story. In Lovelock, Nevada, a small cave near the Humboldt River became the epicenter of one of North America's most bizarre archaeological controversies. 1911. The year when guano miners stumbled upon thousands of artifacts, baskets, tools, bones, and something else. They found massive skeletal remains. According to early reports, these skeletons measured over 9 feet tall, with red hair still clinging to the skulls. Newspapers caught fire with the story. The Nevada State Journal also reported in 1931 that 2 skeletons, one 8 feet, the other over 10 feet, were unearthed in nearby lake beds. Local museums like the Humboldt Museum held samples of the giant sandals and bone fragments, but over time the giant remains began to vanish. Some say they were turned over to the Smithsonian, never to be seen again. Enter the conspiracy alarm. What if a cover-up took place? With the government wanting to preserve the official narrative that giants never existed to start with, it is no surprise that the giant discovery stories are quickly buried. We know it too. If one giant skeleton were confirmed as genuine to the public, it could force history, science, and even theology to rewrite their stories. And this is too much work for those in power. Of course, mainstream archaeology says, not so fast. Most experts attribute the Lovelock discoveries to exaggeration, misinterpretation, or outright hoaxes. They say the so-called giant skulls were likely from large Native American individuals or distorted through storytelling. In 2014, the Smithsonian officially denied ever possessing giant skeletons from Lovelock or elsewhere. DNA tests on red-haired mummies from Peru, once thought to be Nephilim, showed nothing outside the range of normal human variation. To the public eye, no verified Nephilim DNA has ever been recovered. No skeleton over 8 feet has been conclusively documented and peer-reviewed. Still, the stories don't die. They keep surfacing, repeating, evolving. So if there's nothing down there, why are so many cultures so sure there is? What if everything we've assumed so far is wrong? What if the Nephilim were never fully physical to begin with? Some researchers and theologians propose a radical theory. The Nephilim were not just hybrid flesh and blood beings. They were spiritual entities, conscious beings not bound by death, flood, or decay. In other words, they didn't survive the flood because of genetics. They survived because you can't drown a spirit. According to Enoch and writings from early Jewish mysticism, the Nephilim's physical bodies were destroyed, but their spirits were not. Instead, they became restless, malevolent forces, doomed to wander the earth. This matches the description of demons in multiple ancient traditions, disembodied spirits seeking hosts. In this view, the Nephilim are not extinct. They're just invisible. And worse, they're still active. Some believe they operate through possession. That is, they embed themselves within humans, bloodlines, or systems of power. These carriers may not know they are host, yet they exhibit certain traits: a thirst for control, manipulation, cruelty, even supernatural charisma. This isn't just mythology. It mirrors Sumerian exorcism texts, Christian deliverance theology, and even modern UFO abduction lore. Once again, the question arises: are we dealing with ancient spirits or something far stranger? But what if the Nephilim influence doesn't require literal possession? What if it's deeper, built into our very psychology? Some researchers have turned to the idea of genetic memory. This is a controversial but growing field, suggesting we can inherit more than just physical traits. Trauma, instinctual fears, and even behavioral patterns may be passed down epigenetically. Now imagine this applied to the Nephilim. Even if their DNA didn't survive intact, perhaps their urges did. Their lust for domination, their obsession with forbidden knowledge, their rebellion against divine order, you name it. What if those tendencies echo through us? Could this explain humanity's persistent fascination with giants, hybrids, and transhumanism? How about our hunger for power, control, and for becoming gods ourselves? It's a chilling thought that the Nephilim are not just in our myths, but in our minds. Not just walking among us, but whispering into our beings and guiding us.